What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again on February the 18th. It is Tuesday. We are talking college basketball as we are attempting to do every single day from here on out through the season. Goal on the show is to break down the games for the upcoming slate with a slant to betting. Before we do that, let's recap what happened yesterday. A little bit of a slower Monday, so this should be fairly quick. Not too many takeaways at the top of these big leagues in the ACC. Duke predictably annihilates Virginia. I don't know if I'm ever really going to have a takeaway from this league unless it's Duke playing Clemson or Louisville. But fortunately for anyone who actually wants to get information on Duke, they do play a non-con against Illinois this weekend. It's just a JV conference right now, and Duke looks amazing. As far as some of the other games go, Arizona takes care of business against Baylor on the road. Big win for them. I think the biggest stylistic takeaway in this game is that Arizona fully embraced their size. For one of the first times all season, Baylor doesn't have their center right now. They're playing Norchad Omier, who's 6'7", at the center. But we saw Arizona lean into Carter Bryant and Visar. They started Visar, their huge forward, and it worked out for them. They were able to get it done. Kansas State-Utah was the last power game on the slate. Utah gets a home win. I mean, I don't know what to say about Kansas State at this point. Here's just some of the statistics from this game, this absurd game. Utah only shot 38% from the floor. Kansas State shot 43. They were 44% from three. How did they possibly lose a game? Looks like they did an awesome job. Well, they were out-rebounded 46-22, and they allowed Utah to shoot 30 free throws. Kansas State shot 10. Just like this team is a mess. I ended up playing it late because so much money came in on Utah. I'm a little embarrassed with myself for ever backing anything in a Kansas State game, and I got what I deserved. Anyway, in some of the smaller games, we talked about Lamar. They ended up winning outright. Didn't see any injuries leading up to pregame. I'm glad I ended up taking that. It was one of the, games with the most value we've shown all season long, which is surprising considering it's mid-February, but they ended up getting it done. Jackson State gets a win over Bethune-Cookman, a team I almost played this, decided not to, basically at the last second. But after their non-con, it wasn't all that surprising. And honestly, in these mid-majors, there was nothing that really stood out to me, especially the teams that were at the top of these leagues that were expected to win. They mostly got the job done. So we won't belabor the point. It was a fun Monday night slate, a lot of good mid-major action, and there's a little bit today. It's mostly a power-dominated slate, as most Tuesdays are, but we'll talk about at least one mid-major. Before we get started, if you have enjoyed these videos at any point in time, subscribing, leaving a comment, liking the video helps me a ton. We crested 100 subscribers. Thank you to anyone that's done that. We are now 894 away from being able to monetize and make a few cents off the video. So if you've done any of those things, commenting, even watching, like view time helps a ton. It's not lost on me that you are taking your time to listen to my nonsense. So I appreciate you. All right, we're going to do 8 games today. It's a little disjointed. I thought I wasn't going to get to as many and then ended up having extra time. So don't mind the random mid-major game in there. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Up top, I think it's a pretty good night for the Big Ten. Purdue hits the road taking on Michigan State. Obviously, Purdue just lost to Wisconsin in their home building over the weekend. Michigan State gets a win over Illinois, one of their better wins. So props to Michigan State. In this contest, let's just start with resumes. So it wasn't just Wisconsin Purdue lost to last week. They lost to Michigan midweek too. That puts their record at 4-6 in the top 30. Their only non-top 30 loss occurred at Penn State. So it's a pretty good resume for Purdue. They also hold a non-conference win over Alabama. That keeps Purdue at the top of metrics, like a lot of the public efficiency metrics. Ken Pom, Bart Torvik have Purdue extremely high. I think there's maybe a little noise in some of those numbers with Purdue, but it's still a good record, even if they're 4-6 against top 30 teams. Michigan State, they completed the sweep of Illinois over the weekend. That puts them at 3-2 against top 30 teams. So they've played half as many top 30 games as Purdue has. Michigan State also has a few more questionable losses. They've lost to number 47 Memphis, number 56 USC, and number 53 Indiana. We just don't have quite as much information on Michigan State. But in this game, they do come in as a 3.5-point favorite. The total in the game is 148. So a lot of respect coming their way for the home court. This is a pretty nasty clash of styles in this game, which makes me very interested to see in which one wins out. For example, Purdue is 71st in effective height, but they are just incompetent at interior defense. They're outside the top 300 in this metric now. They were barely hanging inside the top 300 ahead of the Wisconsin game. And then, First fouls out in the game. Wisconsin has absolutely no issue really anywhere. They could do whatever they wanted in that game. So now you see this team, Purdue, that is fall out of the top 300. Can Michigan State exploit this? I think the answer is probably yes. For the weaknesses of Michigan State, this team can't shoot. They're outside the top 300 in three-point percentage. But to their credit, they're outside the top 300 in three-point rate. They know they can't shoot. They're not even trying. Get to the rim, attack with your bigs. That's exactly where Purdue is weak. So this sets up as a pretty efficient matchup for Michigan State and how they want to play. The other thing, Michigan State's an awesome rebounding team. They're third in the country in overall rebounding percentage. Purdue is 112th. So you have an advantage on the glass, again, coming largely through size. If Purdue wins this game on the road, first of all, it's going to be tough, but they're going to need to do it through threes, I think. This team is 25th in three-point percentage. Braden Smith has actually been, out of their guards, their worst three-point shooter. Lawyer's still a complete spot-up shooter, liability on defense. His minutes have been yo-yoing all over the place, only had 29 in their loss. But Purdue can also score inside. Trey Kaufman-Renn, for all his defensive weaknesses, has been able to put up points in the paint. Michigan State is pretty complete on defense, though. That is a worry for me. They don't really have a strong weakness. They are 47th inside, 7th from three. The only place they really lag is they don't force a lot of turnovers. It's not a huge problem in this game. Purdue actually has that battle won, the turnover margin, so that is maybe an avenue for success there. At the end of the day, we do make this too many points, and I just can't do it right now. Even though we showed a decent amount of value, I would lean Purdue plus the 3.5, but I'm still a little hesitant with this number. For me, I'm looking more for the 4.5, and it seems to be moving the other way. So I'm not sure we'll end up on a Purdue ticket. If you force me to take it, that would be the side I lean to. Second game, we head to the SEC where Texas A&M takes on Mississippi State. This game might not jump out to you, but it's, according to efficiency metrics, basically a top 25 matchup. A&M is currently getting 2.5 points. Total in the game is 143.5. No major injuries. There weren't any major injuries in the first contest either. Forgot to mention that. I think the biggest thing in this game is Texas A&M's volatility. They play a style of basketball similar to like Houston in previous years where they can't score, they live on defense, and they live on the glass. It makes them extremely volatile. They're still hard to beat, though, just because of their effort and athleticism. In the top 25, this team is 4-2. They beat Texas Tech and Purdue. They've lost outside the top 30 3 times. They lost to number 71 UCF, number 34 Oregon, and number 35 Texas, just speaking to their volatility. And here are just some numbers to explain that shooting. They are 292nd in effective field goal percentage, 254th at interior scoring, 303rd in three-point percentage. How do they keep winning games? Well, they are the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. But again, this just leads to volatility. Not being able to shoot is a problem, and eventually you're going to run into teams that can rebound similarly to you, even if it's a little worse. If you're reliant on that statistic, it's very tough to string together games, especially like when they get to March Madness in the tournament. This is going to be a very highly seeded team. One I will certainly be fading, as we've seen with Houston in the past, teams that are built like this generally cannot win a tournament. You just cannot have this kind of offense. In a one-game setting, sure. That's what we have here. Resume for Mississippi State, they are 2-6 against top 25 teams, so significantly worse. Both of their wins came against the number 24 team, Ole Miss. They also have a few questionable losses. The worst one is the 72-ranked Butler. This team also has issues scoring. They're not as bad as A&M, but they're only 286 in three-point percentage. Unlike Michigan State and some other teams we've talked about, This team hasn't realized they suck at threes. They are near the top 100 in three-point rate. We mentioned this before the Ole Miss game, a game where I took Ole Miss and ended up losing my bet. Mississippi State gets the win. We literally just said, like, maybe this is why you're losing games. Why are you shooting so many threes when you're so bad at them? I don't know. Anyway, they're far more effective inside. They rank 36th in interior scoring. The problem with that is Texas A&M is just so good on defense. They do not have a clear weakness. They defend the paint just fine. So you're facing an incredibly difficult defense who's athletic. They're going to get after you. Texas A&M, I will say, does commit turnovers, and Mississippi State can't force them. So maybe that's an avenue for success for Mississippi State. But I think mathematically this opening at -3.5 was just incorrect. We took Texas A&M plus the 3.5 immediately. I still think 2.5 is decent. As you can see, we make this a little inside that. 70.6 is the projected score for A&M, 72.2 for Mississippi State. So I think that's still semi-worthwhile, but just mathematically, this didn't make a lot of sense. We'll take A&M in single game settings where they're catching this many points. Stuff like tournaments where they need to string together multiple wins, I'll be out on them. Next up, let's go to the Big 12. Weird game. Kansas, one of the maybe most underachieving teams in the last month. BYU, I don't really know. They beat Kansas State. They don't play anyone, so it's hard to evaluate them. More on that in a second. Current spread is -2.5 in favor of the home team. BYU totals 148.5. No major injuries. Kansas is now 3-4 in their last 7 games. That was since the double overtime thriller against Houston. Hearing a lot of people in the media, national media, talking about how that broke Kansas' spirit. Good luck quantifying that. We talk about real numbers here and real statistics, not narratives. But, I mean, what we can say is they have lost 3 times outside the top 25 in that span. One of them respectable to Baylor, who's 29. 2 of them not so respectable, 59 Kansas State, and most recently 76 Utah. All those did occur on the road, but still can't be losing to like the number 76 team in the country. Their overall body of work, not just recently, still has 3 of the best wins in the country. Beat Michigan State, number 17. Beat Duke, number 2. Beat Iowa State, number 8. BYU is none of these data points. They're 1-4 against top 30 teams. Their only win in that span is against Baylor in overtime, again, who's 29th. They only have 2 top 50 wins all season. They have 4 losses outside the top 50. They lost to number 82 Providence, 84 TCU, 76 Utah, and 54 Cincinnati. I will say they were one of the 3 teams this year that ran into Providence with Bryce Hopkins. That's at least worth mentioning. Bryce Hopkins is an elite player. What a bad runoff for BYU. But anyway, as we look at the stylistics, the real problem with Kansas this year is they just haven't figured out a consistent ability to score. Hunter Dickinson is the most efficient player for this offense. You don't need me to tell you that, but he's still limited. He doesn't offer you any floor spacing. He's shooting 23% from 3. He doesn't take a lot of them. So again, you don't really need to worry about him from the perimeter. Then you have KJ Adams. He's just a big oaf on offense who you don't even need to defend. DeJuan Harris is either scared or unwilling to shoot, so you have a limited player there. He's better at creating. Zeke Mayo is basically just a spot-up shooter at 40% from 3. Doesn't do a lot else. And then you still haven't found a 5th player to get on the floor consistently. Every one of their transfers has been a mess. So it's just been kind of a disaster runoff for Kansas. Even though they have a lot of very individually talented players, they do not play well together. And Flory Badinga needs to play more. I'm sorry, KJ. I love that he's an effort guy. Like, you want those guys in your locker room. He just is not capable of playing 35 minutes at a high level. Even his defense has taken a step back this year. Most people will cite that. He's fine on defense. He's had better seasons. It is what it is. Maybe that's the injury. Perhaps he regains form. I don't know. With BYU, maybe this is the get-right spot for Kansas because they're so leaky on defense. And they've been leaky against inferior teams. Remember, that resume is not promising for this BYU team. They're 117th against interior opponents, 239th defending the 3. This defense is much worse than the Utah team that just beat this Kansas team. So perhaps you just have more avenues for success. And you're going to need to score because BYU can certainly do that. They're 10th in effective field goal percentage, 7th in interior scoring, 54th in three-point percentage. Kansas defense is still fit. This is where they are strong, even if they do have some weaknesses this year. So, I mean, like maybe one potential avenue, like BYU can do some weird stuff with their lineup. This is a fun team. I'm just not sure what they are. But Igor Denham, he plays point guard sometimes. 6'9", he stands. If you're going to use him at point guard, you've got like the pint-sized DeJuan Harris covering him. DeJuan Harris does great out as the second best defender on this team, but there's only so much you can do when you're 8 inches shorter than someone. So BYU has like some weird variability to their lineup that I'm not sure how they're going to play this. I personally took an under 149 in the spot when it opened. It starts with tempo. Kansas is a little bit above average at 125th. BYU a little below at 203rd. So we're looking at a pretty neutral tempo. But from there, we have a Kansas offense that can't score, who maybe, like BYU's size, I think could pose some problems when they play like that. And then on the other side, BYU plays strong offense, but Kansas's defense is still elite. BYU has not faced the competition. So we have that coming in under. I know the current number is 148.5. I still think that's semi-playable. We have it coming in just under that. So it is a little more treacherous, but still something you could get to. We talk about all these ahead of time in Discord. If you're interested and you're wondering how you can maybe look at some of these numbers ahead of time, we post projections for games all the way down to the player level. So that's for those of you playing props. Then we do totals and predictions as well. Just trying to provide information there. So if you're interested in extra information and a strong college basketball community, it might be for you. I'll link it below. It's pretty cheap, and there's no long-term commitments. You can do as short as a week. But anyway, also, forgot to mention this at the top. You know this by now. We're talking about gambling. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play in most areas. All right, I think that's most of the stuff that I usually forget to say. So let's move to the Big Ten. Illinois takes on Wisconsin. Fun game. Illinois is a 4.5-point underdog. The total in the game is 160.5. Injury-wise, Illinois lost Morris Johnson, their center, allegedly for the year, too. This is a huge loss. And then I'm not sure what's going on with Trey White. I think he's back healthy. He was sick. He was hurt. He's out of the rotation. I don't think he's injured, but he's not playing. This is a rematch. This game first occurred on December 10th, really early conference game. Illinois beat Wisconsin 86-80. That was on their home floor. That was a crazy game. That game had 43 fouls. Public service announcement. Stop calling fouls. They need to be clear fouls. No more of this. Like, it could be called a foul. It might not. Let the kids play. You are ruining the game. You take the best players off the floor. No one wants to see the bench play. And that was the deciding factor in the game. Now, Wisconsin did this to themselves still. This is the best free throw shooting team in the country that uncharacteristically shot 67% from the line. And Illinois won the game. There were a ton of foul shots. Wisconsin didn't hit as many as Illinois, and they lost. You hate that it's in the refs' hands, but it's the game we play. Since then, Illinois has sort of tumbled. They lost Morris Johnson, more on him in a second. Bench Trey White. They're tinkering with their rotation at every possible opportunity. Illinois has now dropped to 2-6 against top 20 teams. They also have 3 losses outside the top 50. They've lost to 58 Northwestern, 56 USC, and 77 Rutgers. If you're interested in narratives, they also face Duke this weekend. They have a non-con road trip to Madison Square Garden, which you shouldn't be considering a look ahead because Illinois is not really good enough at this point to look ahead to anyone. And this game has massive implications in the conference. But if you wanted to, you could maybe argue look ahead. I don't know how you would quantify it, but good luck to you if you care about that stuff. It's at least worth mentioning. Wisconsin, they are 2-3 against top 25 teams, just play far less than Illinois, whose schedules a rigorous non-con. But very different resume here. Wisconsin doesn't have a single bad loss on the year, unlike Illinois. The worst loss for Wisconsin came against number 27 Marquette, which has aged poorly recently. Like, that used to be near a top 10 win. Anyway, this team beat number 10 Purdue over the weekend. They also have a win over Arizona in non-con. Just a very strong resume for Wisconsin. And I'm not sure what Illinois is doing right now. They are 309th in three-point percentage. They shoot three-pointers at the 25th highest rate in the country. Before Michigan State, I thought maybe they had turned a corner. They had a 2-game span where they shot significantly fewer threes. I think I was wrong. Like, that's a small sample. I might have put too much into that because they come right out and shoot 33 threes against Michigan State, shoot horribly, get absolutely annihilated in the game. at some point, it's just like, okay, one, I understand. I'm not the only one that realizes you can't shoot. I'm sure Michigan State did as well, and they're doing everything they can to prevent you from getting to the rim and letting you take open shots. I get that. But at the same time, like, you need to figure something out if that is your current composition of your roster. Or, I mean, you're just going to lose, and that just might be it. Illinois' team maybe just isn't talented enough to win games like that consistently, which is probably the answer. When you're 309th in three-point shooting, you're just a limited team that's not live to win much. Sure, you could get hot for one individual game, but you're just not capable to win stuff like a tournament. Anyway, Wisconsin's not the strongest team defensively, so perhaps there's more avenues for Illinois, but I will say two of their better defenders are Stephen Kroll and Nolan Winter. They protect the rim. Again, that's where Illinois kind of needs to live if they want to win games. I don't know what to make of the Illinois height lineups right now, height metrics, because of the Morris Johnson thing. On paper, they're tall. They have the second best total rebounding percentage in the country. They're very good defensively inside, but you look at some of these statistics and break them down by individual player. Morris Johnson leads the way in all of these. He's this team's best defender by a mile, and he's their rim protector. So now you should see Kroll, Carter, Gilmore, and Nolan Winter have success inside. Wisconsin's 49th in three-point percentage. They're even more efficient inside. You're going to remove the best defender from the team who plays right in that area. I mean, it's going to be tough for Illinois to get this one done. We make this outside the current spread. I took Wisconsin 3.5 myself, completely fine with this number. It's touching 4.5 in some spots. I'm not even too opposed to playing some of those numbers. Back to the Big 12. Not the most competitive Big 12 game. We try to avoid these, but this is one we show a lot of value on. Texas Tech's -9, totals 140. No major injuries in this game, at least new ones. Frankie Collins has been out for TCU. This is a rematch from January 29th where Texas Tech won 71-57 on their home floor. Nothing really to note in the box score. TCU shot under 40% from the floor, made 55% of their free throws. Kind of the outcome you're going to get when that's what you put on the floor is what it is. When you look at TCU, interestingly, they don't have any egregious losses. They did drop 3 games outside the top 70, Colorado State, Utah, and UCF, but that's kind of where they sit. So it's not like they're an elite team dropping to those teams. They're right in that sort of range. They actually beat Baylor, who was not at full strength in the game. And other than that, beat BYU, beat West Virginia. Those are their 3 top 50 wins overall. Just a really limited team. They're kind of doing exactly what you'd suppose they would do, competing with some of the worst teams in the conference and generally losing to the better ones. Texas Tech just played a lot better schedule so far. They're 3-3 against top 30 teams. They did lose to number 73 UCF and 83 St. Joseph, but they do have some of the best wins in the country. Maybe the single best win. I mean, Florida did beat Auburn, but this Texas Tech team did go into Houston's building and win. So that's at least a top 3 win this season. As far as efficiency metrics go, the problem with TCU is they just can't score. They're 306th in effective field goal percentage, 168th in overall offense. Texas Tech is 29th in defense. Good luck, TCU. Probably not putting up many points here. The other side of the ball is more interesting because TCU is 23rd in total defense themselves, forced turnovers at a high rate. But the problem is Texas Tech doesn't turn the ball over, and TCU still has a major weakness within that defense. They're 283rd in interior defense. Texas Tech, 7th in total offense, 14th in three-point percentage. Their best player is a 6'9 center, JT Toppin. He should annihilate TCU inside. Right when this opened at 7.5, I played this. We make this closer to 10. The current number, I think, is a little rich right now, but I don't even hate playing that. This Texas Tech team should annihilate TCU tonight. All right, here's where we get to the weird stuff. I thought I was only going to be able to do 6 games, had some extra time, decided to throw in a mid-major. We go to the ASUN, where we have Lipscomb taking on Eastern Kentucky. This is a really fun game. And unlike a lot of the mid-majors we talked about yesterday, Lipscomb is in the top 100 in a lot of efficiency metrics, just like this team is 86th in KenPom. This is the profile of a team that could make some noise in March Madness. Still unlikely, but if there's a mid-major team that makes a Sweet 16, it's teams like McNeese, it's teams like Lipscomb that have strong conferences. Like this team for a mid-major has 5 teams in the top 100, so they're not playing complete slouches every week. and they have a good efficiency profile themselves. This game against Eastern Kentucky is an awesome one. So right now there is a tie at first. I think Lipscomb holds some tiebreakers, but they are 11-3. North Alabama is 11-3. Then there's two teams at 8-4. One of them is Eastern Kentucky on the other side of this matchup, and Jacksonville's also at 10-4. So it's very competitive at the top of the ASUN, and this is an increasingly important game, especially for tiebreaker stuff, because Eastern Kentucky beat Lipscomb in the first matchup. So if, however, the rest of the year shook out and these two teams end up tied, Eastern Kentucky is head-to-head already. Lipscomb needs to get this one back. In this game, Lipscomb 3.5-point favorite. Total is 153.5. Eastern Kentucky, only team with a major injury. George Kimball III, pretty efficient player for them. He's been out. All right, rematch. They played on January 30th. Eastern Kentucky gave them that loss. It was 80-71. This was in Lipscomb's building. And as far as the box score goes, it wasn't too crazy. You just look at most of the major metrics, especially the shooting metrics. Eastern Kentucky was just like a sliver better than Lipscomb in all of them. And it ends up being a win for them. Both these teams kind of have weird resumes. Lipscomb played Arkansas and Kentucky in non-con. They predictably got slaughtered in both those games. Those are their only top 100 opponents all year. They did beat Chattanooga, who's 109th, and then they have a lot of losses near the top of the top 100. So like teams that are just outside that, I should say. Western Kentucky at 121, Belmont at 131, 114th Middle Tennessee, 115th North Alabama. All those games were like within a possession or two. So just extremely close losses for Lipscomb, which is how you get their efficiency metrics so high. Eastern Kentucky, they actually played Louisville to a 2-point game earlier this year. You know, that's a rivalry of sorts, I guess. This team has some of the highs that Lipscomb does, but they have more of the lows. They lost to number 279 Ball State, 262 Austin Peay, 353 Stetson. It's just a more volatile Eastern Kentucky team overall. I think Lipscomb gets this one back. Lipscomb's way taller than Eastern Kentucky. They are 104th in effective height. EKU is 231. That extends to rebounding, where Lipscomb's over 100 places better, ranks better than Eastern Kentucky. A lot of that comes through their just elite forward, 6'8", Jacob Ognesevich. I should know this. He's from Wisconsin, but I think that's how you say it. Jacob, if you're watching this, just correct me in the comments. Ognesevich, it's something like that. Anyway, he's 6'8", provides elite floor spacing, shoots 41% from three. Lipscomb, they're a good shooting team. They're just not great on defense. So 26 in effective field goal percentage. I will say Lipscomb defends the three well. They're 51st there, which is kind of where Eastern Kentucky does most of their damage. So it's a bad matchup on paper. Lipscomb is overall just 112th in defense. Eastern Kentucky is barely inside the top 300 at 294th. I was surprised by the first outcome in this series. I'm probably not going to take this just because I make this almost exactly on 3.5. And I'm nervous based on the first outcome when these teams played. But an awesome game in the ASUN. Make sure you're checking out this conference if you've got some extra space on your quad box or whatever. All right, last bonus game that we didn't think we're going to get to, but we got to. We have to touch on the Big East. There's a lot of Big East games tonight. A lot of them are bad. I'm not going to talk about Marquette against Seton Hall, sadly, even though Seton Hall did beat one of these teams. It's Villanova taking on UConn. The spread in the game is 8.5 points in favor of UConn. The total is 139. This is also a rematch. They played on January 8th, and Nova beat UConn 68-66. On their home floor, of course, UConn did not have Liam McNeely at that time. And interestingly, UConn had the better shooting night from the floor, but they only shot 4 free throws. So fouls got Nova over the line. They end up winning the game. But it has just been a roller coaster ride, essentially for every team in the Big East. I mean, maybe less so for Creighton, St. John's, and Marquette, who don't have some of the same L's. But Nova and UConn, I mean, like what were they doing last week? First off, Nova beats number 18 St. John's, and then they go and lose to a shorthanded Providence. UConn was even worse. They beat 31-ranked Creighton, and then they went and lost to number 204 Seton Hall. I just don't know what to do with this. Clearly, both these teams are not as good as we thought they were coming into the season, but how do they match up here? UConn's going to play the taller lineup. I think that's helped by getting back their 6'7" freshman wing, Liam McNeely. He's going to do a lot for this team. So UConn has a slightly taller lineup. They're ahead of Villanova in rebounding. Villanova is only 150th in interior defense, so I think getting McNeely back is going to help that. Just UConn scoring around the rim entirely. On the other side, the better shooting team is Villanova. They're fourth in the country in three-point percentage. A lot of that is Eric Dixon, who leads the nation in scoring. UConn is only 284th in perimeter defense, but I think getting back McNeely helps. He is their best defender statistically. He's a 6'7" winger, so his size is elite on the perimeter. And just this is probably narrative-wise the worst spot for Villanova. You get UConn coming off the Seton Hall loss. You got to go to UConn. Also, UConn looking to avenge a loss from earlier this year. We make this inside the 8.5, but I just can't possibly touch this with how volatile both these teams are. And some of the narrative stuff has me hesitant, and I almost never talk about that stuff. But at least a pause for me at the moment. But that'll do it for the 8-game Tuesday slate. If you have any feedback, please let me know in the comments. Anything you think that might improve the show, things you like, things you don't like, is all very useful to me. I appreciate you watching. If you're looking for extra content, check out Twitter. I'm at Matt_Gajewski or Discord. Until next time, good luck, everyone. We will see you later.